Hi everyone, welcome to episode 9. Today I'd like to switch it up and talk about nature. Um, and talk about nature from the perspective not of the kind of high tech industrial technology that I've been talking about to date, but a different kind of technology, different sort of technique uh, that is a way of working directly on nature. And of course, that is gardening. And gardening um, was always part of my childhood. And Mum is a incredibly talented gardener. Um, we always had gardens growing up. Uh, there was always food from the garden. There were always vegetables, um, and uh, and I love them. I love them, of course. Anyone who grows their own food knows it's just better, it's tastier, the flavors are more complex, um, and then those of the food you get from the supermarket. And so I always had that literally homegrown thing growing up as a point of reference. My mom's an amazing chef, so that those ingredients always were enjoyed alone or on their own or incorporated into cooking. Um, it was a bit of a different time too. I think gardens were maybe more ubiquitous. Certainly in our neighborhood, which was a sort of lower middle class, at least in the phase of my life I'm thinking about, which is early grade school, and early grade school in the neighborhood that we lived in. I remember everyone having a garden, so there were backyards. It was a kind of suburban style of neighborhood, even though I mean, it was a kind of in a quite urban, um, downtowny kind of neighborhood. And so, of course, I remember gardens being planted. I remember helping in my little kiddie way, and I remember loving it. I mean, it was every bit the sort of wizardry and wonder that my dad and my uncles had introduced to me through high technology. This was a different kind of wonder, um, and a different kind of knowledge, but produced again by technique and by technology. And uh, and it was fun. It was fun because if you're a kid, garden raiding was a thing. We were little scamps, or at least I was. And so you went into a neighbor's garden and you stole some things, and we did that. I'm ashamed to say, probably fairly routinely. I don't remember ever being caught. I think I remember being almost caught once or twice, and I do remember one time taking so much from some poor person's garden and feeling guilty afterwards, and having my first intimation that this wasn't just like foraging. This was gardens represented other people's work, and so I had a bit of that, early, that's initial taste of sort of the social conscience, um, and but it was fun. It was so much. It was so much fun, and uh, I remember. Again, this is very early, very young. I might have been 5 or something. My mom planting tulips, tulip bulbs, and they started to grow. And one day I decided what I really wanted to do was give mom a flower. And so I went, she was out, and I went and I dug up a tulip, and I thought I would harvest it and give her a flower. And it didn't work. I broke it when I tried to dig it up, and so I tried a second one. I broke it, and of course, in my in my kiddie way, I thought, I'll just keep going. It's got to work out eventually. And I dug up her whole tulip garden, and then I freaked out, and she came home, and I don't remember her being mad at all. She just didn't even blink. Um, I was instantly forgiven, and that's my mom. I mean, that's my mom. She is a big heart. She is a giant heart, and her capacity for love is just nothing short of inspiring. But we always had gardens, and I remember we had some point, I won't be able to remember the year, but again I was very young. We had a community garden plot that we went to, and I loved that. I remember going there and working on it with everyone, and just loving it as well, and sort of seeing this different model of gardening, which is not in your backyard, but sort of in a space that everyone, a common space. So the idea of a common space that was shared, and in which we each had our own little plot. So that was interesting. And so I remember going and getting, we come back with bags of carrots and whatnot. Um, and all of that gardening, I sort of took it for granted. And so, when I was older and moved out, um, it was hard for a while because, of course, you're young, you don't have money or whatever, and I lived in places without any outdoor space or backyards, of course, or anything like that. So I lived without gardening for a long, long time, and it was only when I started to live in an apartment that had a little balcony on it, that could have some plants, and we could have some plants in pots, and start to have a few herbs or whatever. And then we were lucky enough to finally get a place that had a bit of a terrace on it, so we could finally have with some sun exposure, so we could have a garden, a little vegetable garden, um, in the downtown core, and that's really where it began. That is the sort of practice of gardening kind of reincorporated into my life, into our lives. My wife is a extremely talented gardener, more skilled than I am. She knows a tremendous amount. Her mom is an amazing gardener. So I've been lucky to have these people in my lives who are master gardeners, and have the opportunity to learn from them. And the garden, the terrace garden, has been utterly transformative. Mostly, we made a rule of trying to stay focused on growing stuff that's productive food, in other words. And of course, I have my bonsai tree thing, so there's a bit of a negotiation in terms of like how much of our little limited square footage is going to be, for food, and how much for pretty things to look at. Unfortunately, the bonsai trees, you would imagine you know, they're miniature, but they seem to get bigger every year. So there's and I have added to the collection over the years. So there's a you know, bit of a balancing act to do there. But that has been a source of just infinite richness, and pleasure and joy and just healthiness in my life and our lives. Just to be out there every day, to be in the downtown core, but to be able to have a few square feet where you can lose yourself in green. And of course, for me, this was the beginnings of my insect obsession. Was the garden. That's where it all began, because once we started planting things, and in a space that was immediately connected to our living space, and we could see every day, then we discovered the bees coming, and that sparked our interest and curiosity, and I don't quite remember how it all played out, but we started to try to take some photos of the bees, and I got into it and got obsessive and started to try to figure out the technical challenges. What do you need to do this? And it was just the infinite learning of it was what was so appealing, and it was a subject that was right there, right, literally outside our doorstep, and there's so much to learn. All the different species and what were their lives like, and what did they feed on, and that to me was very evocative. And I felt like I discovered there are all these neighbors in the city that I hadn't even noticed, hadn't paid attention to, but live right there with us, share our spaces intimately, and it was a world. I mean, there's a kind of Walter Mitty-esque appeal of escaping into another reality, without having to kind of travel somewhere. So there's no question that that was, part of the romantic appeal, um, was this idea to see another world that was right here. But that was extraordinary, and the macro lens does that. It suddenly, by changing the scale like that, you are suddenly on a different planet in another universe, and it's mysterious and wonderful, and it begins in the garden. That's the garden, because that is the world of the garden. It is mysterious and wonderful. Growth, the processes of growth are uh, truly magical, to witness and to understand their complexity. And it's an infinite subject made for everyone, regardless of your belief system, whether you believe the universe is created or has existed forever, or came out of nothing as a process of the operation of the laws of the universe. I mean, whatever it is the great mystery that envelops us of who we are and where we come from and where we're going. That great Gauguin um, phrase, that cry into the universe, that he inscribed on a painting. That's the deep question, and um, technology is one way in. Gardening, which is technique, right? I mean, this is what happens in the Neolithic, as human societies move from being sort of, this is the cliche of human development, the move from the sort of hunter-gatherer thing, which had been the model of life since the origin of, since the early hominids, um, to suddenly, or not suddenly, but gradually, one extremely slowly over the course of eons, um, insights into how to manipulate the natural world to human advantage. That slow, the kind of long pre-dawn, the almost eternal pre-dawn phase of human history, if you want to put it in those terms, which are not, which are loaded terms, right? Uh, uh, which is not my intention. I don't want to sort of pass judgment on different lifestyles or this kind of thing, but rather to contemplate, the story of the development and changes of human societies. Um, that that was the first technological leap, or that was not the first, but that was a major technological leap that changed human society, how we related to one another, how we built our societies, how we understood the world, even devotional practice, religions, human devotional practice becomes transformed by these social changes. And once you have agriculture and a sort of settled, fixed societies, they get larger and wealthier and more complex, and religion develops to develop into institutions that we can start to recognize, like i.e. the church and all of that. So all those things. I'm sorry for the lecture, but the point is that it's that thing we think of maybe as being so simple. Maybe we take it for granted. Gardening, it's such a, in a funny way, it's the least, if you tell someone, oh, my hobby is gardening, it's sort of the least exciting hobby you could almost imagine, right? Because it's so unexotic, and yet it's become exotic, right? Because we're so detached from the natural world, and we get food from the supermarket. However, the whole point of it is, if we think about early technology, the earliest gardening implement was the stick, right? To make a hole, to plant a seed, to ensure, to move from sort of the scattering thing to ensuring, to sort of fixing life in place and starting to take control over its space, right? This is the origin of the field. The regular lines of planted seeds, with that are planted with holes made with a stick. This is the beginning, and eventually it'll become the plow and all of the rest of it. But that's early technology, and that's early intervention. That's the beginning of the long story of the development of human technology. It's the early chapters right there. So gardening is profoundly important. I mean, it is, in terms of its age and its sort of foundational nature. It is the most important human technology. One may argue. There's an argument for that. And I think one of the things I've taken away from gardening, a lesson that it has taught me, is that for all of the sort of godlike aspect of it, it seems to be this act of producing life, creating life. Of course, it's not you creating life; it's nature creating life, and you are merely trying to intervene in your minimal and clumsy human way in that incredibly like unbelievably complex and sophisticated process that is of life. Of all of the natural processes are just fantastically complicated, and so there's an aspect of gardening that is humbling, because you're not really creating life. All you're doing is becoming a kind of temporary partner in the most minor of ways in the operation of these natural forces. And there's a lot that we do to nature in order to thrive as a society, or for economic benefit, or whatever the thing may be. I think of genetic manipulation, which is not new, which has been going on since the dawn of agriculture. Selective breeding, right? So we've always intervened, or at least we have from the earliest days, in a deep way. We've always messed with the kind of building blocks of life, but we're always a kind of junior partner to the process of creation, in the process of creation, to nature itself. And if you're a gardener, you know that sense of humility. There's only so much you can do to intervene, beyond which you just can't force it. You can't break the rules of nature. You can't break the laws of physics. You can't exceed the physical requirements of the species that you're growing. And everything requires that you submit to nature, to its timing. You have to plant at the right time, to its weather. You have to think about exposure, and how do I water this thing properly, and all of these things. And through this whole process, no matter how good you become, there's always an understanding that you're never ultimately the one in control. It's nature who decides, and if you're going to succeed in exploiting nature, you have to do so in a way that also respects nature. And I don't mean in the ecological sense. That's a whole other conversation that I don't want to have right now. But in the sense that nature will allow you to do certain things. Beyond that, you will fail if you try to grow that species in your zone that it's not, it cannot handle, it will die. You cannot, there's no way around that. I learned that the hard way with bonsai. I wanted to grow exotic tropical species without, I was completely ignorant when I started. And the first tree I got was a tropical tree, and I tried to keep it outside. Like in my initial readings, I read that, okay, real bonsai practitioners only keep their trees outside. And, I didn't understand that there is actually a practice for certain tropical species of indoor bonsai keeping that you can do successfully, but it's hard. You have to have lights, and you have to really know what you're doing. Of course, I knew none of that, so my first tree died, and I learned the lesson again very late and very stupidly. About that, about zones, and about, again, that's a lesson of humility. You can't just randomly choose a species and decide that you're going to grow it. You need to approach the problem with humility. What will grow in my climate? And also with laziness. What will grow with a minimum of effort? What nature teaches you is that once you're starting to force it, it's probably going to fail. And I learned this again with bonsai and also with gardening in terms of disease. What happens? Why do plants get sick? Why do trees get sick and start to decline? And of course, it has to do with your care of them. How good are you? How much are you paying attention? How disciplined are you? Are you watching the weather to know that, oh, today is a hot day, which means I can't let the watering go, and I might even have to water early in the morning and maybe again at night. So there is that. It's not so much to the degree that you are making nature submit to its will, you are submitting to nature's will. And it's for me, it has been a good way to be in the world, because what a great lesson. On the one hand, you have to figure out how to go out and be effective and accomplish your goals. On the other hand, you have to do so in order to succeed. You have to be humble and pay attention and think about the consequences of your actions. Now I sound like a school marm, but again, this was a great formation, even a kind of ethical, moral formation. Um, I mean, it's a profound one, actually, and because it is really the question of how do you take care of another being who will die if you don't take care of it. So there are multiple lessons, all bound up in gardening and in just growing a houseplant, whatever it is. And I mean, I could do another episode on pets, which is part of all of this, and really even more so this question of the care of a being whose life depends on it. Um, that's, I mean, that's just so big. So I'll leave that for another episode, and I'll wrap it up there. And just by saying thank you to Mom. I am the person I am today, not least because of gardening, because of how you raised us, and I'm grateful. Love you all. Thank you for listening.